All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
T'es mon amour, je suis ta maîtresse. T'es tout ce que je veux. T'es tout ce que j'ai voulu.
And welcome back to the second half of tonight's show here on the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Excuse me for that, X Zone Nation. You're listening to us right here on Classic 1220 and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. My guest this hour is Mr. Robert Coppes, and we're going to be talking about near-death experiences. Now, Robert Coppes is a scientist and retired financier, has studied near-death experiences for decades, and has lectured on the topic in the U.S. and Europe. His latest book on NDEs is called Impressions of Near-Death Experiences, and it in fact is a compilation of hundreds of quotes from experiencers. He considers them to be the best tutors in life. Previous books on NDEs are Essence of Religions and The Messages from the Light. Joining me now from Amsterdam in the Netherlands is Robert Coppes. And Robert, welcome to the X Zone.
Well, wonderful to be on your show. It's so nice to be from this side of the ocean and then talking to someone on the other side. That's magic to me still.
All right, Robert. Well, it's great having you with us. Tell us, where did your interest in NDEs come from?
Well, I was studying economics in the Netherlands somewhere, and I read the book by Raymond Moody, written by Raymond Moody, the one who coined the term near-death experiences. And you must know that I was raised Catholic, Roman Catholic, with hell and purgatory, and I always thought that's a kind of a silly story. It doesn't resonate with me. I thought there was something wrong with it. And then in the book of Raymond Moody, there was a woman who had a near-death experience and had a life review in her near-death experience. And during that life review, she saw whatever she did in her life, but no one was judging her. So there was no hell, no purgatory. There was only unconditional love. And then I thought, that is how it is. And that's where my interest in near-death experiences came from. That's where it started.
Now, how would you describe a near-death experience to someone who had never heard that expression before?
It's an overwhelming experience. That's the first thing. Someone who has had such an experience changes thoroughly. It's really a life changer. And what do they experience? They say themselves that they exit their body and they go to a realm or some place that's very unearthly. There is a lot of love, unconditional love, and light. And mainly that is what it is all about. It's about unconditional love, and these experiences are real because so many people have had those experiences from all walks of life. It doesn't matter which country you're from, if you're rich or poor, or what religion you're from. Every person is capable in principle to have such an experience. And interestingly, the term near-death experience gives you the idea that you have to be close to death in order to have such an experience. But now we know that there are a lot of other possibilities to have such an experience, like an existential crisis, a real psychological crisis that someone goes through can trigger such an experience. Or we also have cases where people have had meditation, did meditation very deeply or prayed very deeply, have had such an experience. And there are even cases where people spontaneously had such an experience. So just out of the blue. But most of them come with a medical critical situation like, cardiac arrest, for instance, or when you have an accident with your car or some other way.
Now, you yourself, have you ever had a near-death experience?
No, I never had one. That is on one of the conferences of IANS, that's the International Association of Near-Death Experiences. Right. A woman came up to me and she said, "You have had an experience as a child," and well, there is a moment in my life as a child that I went through the cupboards of my mother's kitchen, and I thought cinnamon smelled very nice, and I inhaled it, and then I couldn't breathe for some while, and I think I passed out. That could have been a moment, but I can't remember anything of it. But she definitely thought that I had such an experience. She saw that in my aura. That's what she said. I remember that distinctly.
All right, but you had no recollection of it. This lady just came out of the audience who apparently was an aura reader and gave you that information.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Wow.
But I've read so many of these stories. I've spoken to so many NDEs that I think you don't need to have an NDE yourself in order to be touched by, if you want to say it like that, by the light. Because if you really understand, or you let it sink into you what people say, and you shouldn't read or listen to just one story. You have to have many stories that you can go through. Then it will touch everyone. It can touch everyone, and that's the reason why I wrote that book. You know, if you look at a building, you only see the front side. You don't see the back side,
that's
the
right,
sides. You don't see the interior. You need to have more points of view. That's why I wrote this book with so many points of view of people who've had such an experience. Only when you have so many points of view, you have maybe an impression of what an NDE is. And that's also the title of the book, Impressions of Near-Death Experiences.
What important research on an NDE is there? For example, is there any scientific proof that there is an actual NDE and that the afterlife really does exist?
That's an important question. There really is. I think yes, there is. There is circumstantial evidence, and it's not scientific evidence. That's the problem. You cannot repeat an NDE. That will be immoral. You can't kill someone again almost and then see if they have an NDE. No. So what you can do, and that's what has done in the Netherlands. There was an important study, a prospective study. That's a word that in fact says that you can repeat this study, where they had 10 hospitals during 13 years, checking on everyone who came into the hospital with a cardiac arrest, and then ask if they remembered something from the time they were out. And there were 344 people in that study, and 62 people remembered something. Those were the NDEs. Now, the interesting thing is that you have two groups, and one group that hasn't had such an experience and the other group that does. And if you compare both groups and you see a difference in the groups, then that could trigger the NDE. Now, it was determined that there was no difference between either of these two groups. So each of the groups had a lack of oxygen, or each of the groups were dying, and they had perhaps substances in their brain that triggered these NDEs. So those are not that cannot be the reason for an NDE. And these studies, this study has been repeated in the United States and the United Kingdom with the same kind of results. But another set of interesting research is actually the veridical observations. That's a term, a scientific term to describe a verifiable out-of-body experience. Now, if an NDE it starts with an out-of-body experience. So you get out of your body, you can roam around the place where your body is, like for instance in a hospital or so, or near the crash site, and you can see things that happen or that are somewhere there. And once you recover again, you can tell people, I've seen this and that, and that can be checked. And there are hundreds of these stories where people have these out-of-body experiences where they saw something that was confirmed later on, and that has been documented and confirmed independently. So those are very important events, and because there are so many of them, you cannot just refute them. You can't say, well, this is a misser or so, it can't be true or so. You have to acknowledge them. And what it says is that your consciousness can be outside of your body and be independent. It doesn't need your body to exist. And that's where it starts. If that's the first phase, and then these people tell these other stories about the light, about this heavenly environment, then that could be true as well.
Some people report during an NDE that they have a life review. Many people say they have met Jesus. Other members of their family who have passed away and have greeted them at the gates, I guess we can call them, but said, no, it's not your time, go back. Is this a common thread with all NDEers?
There are two things that you say. That's a life review. That's true. People have such an experience. And the other thing is that people are being told to go back again because their life is not finished yet. Yeah, that occurs regularly, very regular. And sometimes people want to go back because they have something on earth that they want to look after, like children or something else. They really want to go back. But in many cases, people want to stay because it's such a nice environment. And there's a nice story of a woman who, let me tell that story. She was told to go back, and she wanted to go back. And then she had been in that area, in that heavenly place for a long time, she thinks. And she said, it was so clear to me why we are on earth, what is the situation. I understand everything. It's very simple. It's incredible that we can't understand it while we are here on earth. And then she thought, I have to go back. I want to go back. And she was told to go back. And then she thought of, I want to keep some of this knowledge. I want to keep the essence of that knowledge. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remember one line that says it all. And then she came back and she remembered that line. Because the point is, when you come back again, you lose a lot of information that you have had there.
Bob, we're going to have to take a little break here, so please hold on to that thought. We've got a cliffhanger here right now, X-Zone Nation. We're talking about near-death experiences with our very special guest, Robert Coppes. And if you'd like to contact Robert, if you'd like to find out more about him, his website is www.bcoppes.com. That's BOBCOPPES.com. And Bob and I will be back on the other side of this break as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in beautiful St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and around the world on classic1220.ca. And welcome back. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're talking to Bob Coppes all the way over in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And Bob is talking about near-death experiences. And if you'd like to get more information about Bob, maybe you'd like to share a story with him, bobcoppes.com. Bob, what does it mean when people say, people who have had, these near-death experiences, they say that we're all interconnected? What do they mean by that?
Let us finish the cliffhanger once.
Oh, all right.
About the story about the woman who went back to Earth after she was told that she had to go, and she wanted to go. And she wanted to remember that one line that says it all. And the one line was, all is everything and everything is one. All is everything and everything is one. And she really, she said, it is all one. It's a oneness out there. We are all one in this together.
Now, let me ask you before we get on to the next question, and I'm sorry for not getting back to the story when we came back. What was this lady's philosophical views when she had her near-death experience prior to it?
I don't know. This was an example of an NDE that can be found on the website of IONS.
Now, why I'm asking you this is because if somebody has a near-death experience with preconceived ideas on what a NDE should be, I'm wondering if it relates to them when they lose this consciousness and they have an NDE. Are they influenced by their philosophical outlooks before they even have the NDE?
Well, it's true. There is some kind of a cultural component in NDEs. Typically, someone who adheres to Islam wouldn't see Jesus, typically, or the other way around. A Christian wouldn't really see Muhammad or Mahdi or someone else from the Islam faith. But sometimes it happens. There are people that see more of these religious figures during their NDE. But there is a cultural component. Yes, some people see Jesus. Yes. They are from a Western Christian society. That's true.
So doesn't this raise a question as to the validity of these reports when somebody comes back from an alleged near-death experience, that this was a preconceived idea and they may have just been replaying something in their consciousness?
No, not really, because the main thing that, according to me, I think people should read the book and then come to their own conclusion based on all these impressions. But if you'd ask me, I think that oneness and unconditional love are the two main factors in NDEs, and they are reported over and over again. And so especially the unconditional love is something that is, people are bewildered by it because it's so big and so out of this world. That is not something that is given to them before through their religion or other views.
But Bob, please don't take this the wrong way, but how can you believe something you haven't experienced?
How can you believe something you haven't experienced? The experience itself is so strange to people. It is out of this world.
No. What I'm talking about, Bob, is how can you, Bob Coppes, who wrote a book about near-death experiences, actually consider what is being told to you as the truth when you yourself have never had a near-death experience?
Okay, yeah, but I think that's where the veridical observations come into play. There are so many of these stories, well documented, that one should really see this evidence as circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real. And the only thing that you can actually say is that your consciousness can be separate from your body and it doesn't need your body to survive. But these people also have these other stories of the heavenly environment. And it's true. It's kind of a belief that I think these people are true. saying true stuff. And I've spoken to so many people. You have to speak to someone who has had such an experience, and you will see that they are so genuine. They believe in it. They know it's true. And one of the things that changes them very much is their fear of death goes away in almost all cases.
You know, you were talking
because
about...
they've seen it.
You know, you were talking about circumstantial evidence, right? So many people saying the same thing. So it must be true. We can say the same thing about Santa Claus, because you've got people around the world who believe in Santa Claus, who've never seen Santa Claus, and we're talking about the same circumstantial evidence here when it comes to near-death experiences.
But these circumstantial evidence, these things that I'm talking about, and that's in the book, The Self Does Not Die, published by Irons, these are stories that have been corroborated and confirmed by independent others, like doctors who said that conversation that this woman is telling that she's overheard, that has taken place really. The things that we bumped into during her surgery, she couldn't have known that, and that's true. And there are so many of these stories. I can tell you one.
Sure.
For instance, Pam Reynolds, a singer in the United States, she had this aneurysm. That's a vein that has a bubble on it in her. In this case, in her brain. She needed surgery because if it collapses, if it explodes, then she will die. So what they did was they took her in an operation with a nickname Operation Standstill, because that's what they did with her body. They cooled her body down to a very low temperature. It's 15 centigrade. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. And they reduced her blood pressure. They took away. They took the blood out of her body temporarily to deflate the bubble and then mend it. It's like a defective tire. I'm in the Netherlands, and we have so many bicycles here. We know the procedure. You just clip off the bubble and then put a little sticker on it, and then you reflate everything and you can go. And during that operation, she went out of her body. She was hovering just behind the surgeon, and she saw exactly what he did. She overheard the discussion about her veins being too small on one side of her leg that they needed. Apart from, so they had to take it from the other side and things like that. She described the tools that they used in very great detail, and it was all confirmed by the doctor, who was astonished that she had seen, or that she could do that she could really describe the whole operation.
Now, what does the medical community outside of the International Association for Near-Death Studies say? You know, there's a great controversy here. And in fact, NDEs are not supported by the scientific community, are they?
Well, there's a growing group of doctors, also neurosurgeons, for instance, even Alexander had an NDE. He's a neurosurgeon. He's quite famous for having had such an NDE and being vocal about that. And he said that there is a lot of more other doctors in that area that know or that start to understand that the material world with the body only producing the consciousness is something that that's maybe not the right way. And also perhaps when you see other studies in physics, so science that come to the conclusion that the matter is not something that is objective. It requires, there is also something subjective about it. It's quantum mechanics, and I don't understand that stuff very well, but it's there's a lot of study going on, and people that have had Nobel Prizes are sometimes saying stuff that maybe comes closer to what NDEs
Sure.
say.
Okay, but here we are. It is, we're in the month of January of the year 2024. To my knowledge, at this very moment in time, near-death experiences have not been accepted by the scientific community, as well as they have not been accepted by the medical community, except for a small percentage of their members. Am I correct?
True, yes. But that's growing, I think.
Right.
And it's no problem for me if they don't want to go that way, because I don't know.
It's a matter of belief, right?
No.
It's not?
It's if you want to look at the data, like the study that I told you in the Netherlands,
Yes.
But also the studies of theoretical observations, all the cases that
Sure.
are growing. Second edition of the book, The Self Does Not Die, with even more cases. I think that's something that one should not overlook.
I agree it should not be overlooked, but it should not be taken for verbatim, since it cannot be authenticated or verified.
True, it's not. The theoretical observations are not considered scientific,
Right.
because you cannot repeat them. That's the problem. But if you have so many of these cases and the number grows, then it is something that you cannot just put aside. You have to go into that and then understand. The first step is that the consciousness can exist outside the body.
If this is such a critical fact, and there are so many scientists now looking at it, and as well as members of the medical community, how come there is not a push by the scientific community and the medical society to further investigate near-death experiences on a much greater scale?
I don't know. This maybe because they are afraid to be thought of to be spiritually oriented, and that's considered not very good for the medical profession. It's still that kind of stuff is
Really?
out there. I think so. That's what I think.
I would have thought that the medical community and scientific community, if they thought there was any credence to the near-death experience, would want to jump on it right away, because this could be a major leap forward in medical research as well as scientific research.
I don't know.
We have to take our break right now, so please stand by. Exo Nation, Bob Coppes is our guest of this hour, and his website is, you ready, Exo Nation? BobCoppes.com. That's BobCoppes.com. Now, whether you're a skeptic or a believer, I'd love to hear from you, Exo Nation. Send me an email, exone@classic1220.ca. In your opinion, Exo Nation, I'm only asking you for your opinion. Are near-death experiences real? Or are they part of a psyche within our mind that we are unfamiliar with at this point? Or, as some believe, a near-death experience is nothing more than a dream. We'll be back on the other side of this break as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Once again, my email address is exone@classic1220.ca. The X-Zone is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. So whatever you do, keep on listening, and we'll be back right after this short break.
Now, I think I know why it sounded so strange on the telephone. Well, it's hard when you discover what keeps you going, keeps you on.
And welcome back. This is the X-Zone. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and around the world on classic1220.ca. Our guest this hour is Bob Coppes. We're talking about near-death experiences. Bob, I don't want to burst your bubble or burst anybody's bubble who may have had a near-death experience. I myself have never had one, so I cannot attest to its validity. I've read a lot of books, and still, it's one person saying their experience. I don't understand why, if so many people are having these near-death experiences, and members of the medical community are also reporting them. Once again, why is there not much more attention being put on the near-death experience, especially since, if it is true, it opens up a whole new chapter within the history of humanity?
I believe so too. That's why I try to bring this more out in the open, and IANS does that too. Because if people really understand that there are veridical observations, and those give circumstantial evidence that NDEs are real, and maybe people will get to understand what the main messages are, and those are unconditional love and that we are all one. And important for being all one is that if I do something to you, I actually do it to myself. And I need to give you an example from
Sure,
that.
please. Yeah.
From people who had a life review. Like, for instance, Damien Brinkley. He wrote a book about that.
Yeah, I've had Damien on the show.
There you go. And the interesting thing about him is that he considered himself as a horrible person because he stole bikes of children when he was young. He was in countless fights. But he went also to work for an American organization that went to other countries to kill off adversaries of the U.S. government. And one time he blew up a whole hotel with 50 people in it just to get out one. And in his life review, he saw all his kills. He saw it not only from his point of view as an onlooker, as the one who does it, but also from the point of view of the one who is killed. So the receiver, but not only the one who's killed, but also the wives and the children of these people. And he said that was really painful. That was more than really painful. It was too much for me to take in. And the fact that you can feel it from the other side, from the receiver's side, that's been reported by so many people. And by the way, that's something that no one would really have thought of when you speak about, when you invent something like NDEs. This is really a very special innovation, if you want to put it that way, in the thinking of people, to feel what someone else, what you did, as if you are that someone else. So there are so many people with life reviews, and the interesting thing is Damien Brinkley was not judged, and that's where I started off with my own experience with starting with my interest in near-death experiences, that there's no judgment. So in Christianity, there is a judgment. There's Jesus comes and will judge you, and will put people in hell, a purgatory, or in heaven. But that doesn't seem to be the case. We are not judged.
Well, I've never heard of Jesus putting anybody in hell, and I go to church every week. So where do you get the concept that Jesus is the one who puts people into hell?
Well, he comes at the end of times, and you can argue whether this is the end of time, when someone dies and has an NDE. But he's going to judge people, and the good ones will go to heaven, and the other ones go to hell or purgatory.
Well, don't we end up judging ourselves, and aren't we held accountable for our actions?
That's it. That's what is said by people who had an NDE. There's no one judging you, and if someone judges you, that's yourself. You don't need anyone else to judge you, because you see what you did to others, and you feel it from the other side, from the receiver's side.
But, even in the Bible, it says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So it's the same thing being said.
Exactly.
And you're saying, if I understand you correctly, that the people who are having these NDE experiences are saying that it is totally different from the message that they're getting from the Bible or their established religious philosophy, which it isn't. It's the exact same thing.
It is, to a certain extent, the same thing. Yeah, that's true. That's exactly what you said. It's don't do to others what you don't want for yourself. But that's something that people learn in church, but they don't really feel maybe too much about that. But if you have had an NDE and you have had your life review and you see what you did to others as if you are the other, then it comes very close.
Well,
that's a life changer for
Well,
people.
I'll tell you something. When I was very young, my parents taught me that, first of all, if you do something bad, there are consequences. And they taught me at a very young age, as well as teaching my brother, and I've taught my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, always to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. When I was a police officer after graduation, my uncle, who was a sergeant, came to me and he said, "All right, Rob, now remember, always treat people on the other side of the badge as you would want to be treated if you were in their shoes." So, this goes on a long, long time, and I've never had a near-death experience. Any of the information that was given to me pertaining to that was not given to me by anybody who had a near-death experience. What it was given to me was by people who cared and who understood what life is about. Is it possible that people who come and have a near-death experience, I'm not saying all of them, please don't get me wrong, but there are those who never have had a near-death experience but claim they have had a near-death experience to get their 4 or 5 minutes of fame?
Maybe, I don't know. Of course, there are people that do that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. But if you really talk to someone who have had a near-death experience and it's a genuine one, you would understand, because they are full of it. They talk in a different way than when they make something up. You can tell the difference.
How do you tell?
What you say about you being raised in that way, being a Christian? I can tell you there are so many Christians that should be raised in that way, but haven't been raised in that way because they do all kinds of stuff to each other in a not very nice way.
Yeah, I agree, but just to say that
it's not that all the Christians are nice, and that's far beyond the truth. There's a lot of Christians that do bad things to each other.
Of course. There's good and bad in everyone.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just to say that somebody
In
has a
every
near-death
religion,
experience and their life has changed and they come away from the experience holding hands and singing Kumbaya, I find that hard to believe.
The people who've had a near-death experience and have had a life review and such a very in this way that I just described, they change. They change from what they were before to what they become later, and they become more sociable, less interested in money, less interested in power, more interested in others, more conscious of what they do to others.
Let me ask you this question.
Maybe you have been raised in that way, and that's very good, that you had to become conscious of what you do to others. But people who've had near-death experience with a life review, it's for them, it's their point.
Let me ask you this, Bob. If somebody has a life review, or if somebody has a near-death experience, who has led what we believe to be the perfect life? He was kind, considerate, never did anything wrong, was always there to help his neighbor, always there to lend a hand, dug deeper into his pockets at Christmas time to help people out. If he had a near-death experience, how would he change?
He would change in any case, because if you go through this, it doesn't leave you untouched. And I can't tell you in what way they would change, but one of the ways where they would change is perhaps they will become less into strict religion and become more spiritual. And maybe they will continue doing the stuff that they did before, because it sounds good, it sounds nice. They become less interested in power, less interested in money. That's the common thing.
Is there a common thread as to the sociological standing of somebody who has a near-death experience, or does it go throughout the entire social standings?
You mean who can have an NDE?
Well, who has one of these NDEs that you were describing, where they come out a better person, more understanding? They really don't need the established religious philosophies in order to go forward to, and they don't fear death.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What do they do after they have had such an experience? Well, I know this guy, for instance, who was a dealer for a bank or so. He stopped doing that kind of job and went into something else. Daniel Brinkley, for instance, he changed his life thoroughly because he became attached to a hospice where he helped people who were close to death. So yeah, people change.
If you were to
They don't become saints. I don't want to say that, but they understand that love is very important, and what you do to another is very important. And let me give you an example of a little girl, Christina, who was abducted by two men. And she was drowned by them. She was facing upwards, so she could see the sun through the water. And at the same time, she was up in the sky looking down on the whole scene. And she saw her father running towards these guys and rescuing her. But she had her NDE, and in her NDE she said, I had a conversation with someone, and that must have been God. There was no one else. It must have been God. And God said to me, just go about your life. Go further. It's very easy. I'll give you the recipe for life. And it's very easy. It has 4 ingredients. And these are the 4 ingredients: love, be loved, just be, and experience life.
Wow,
It's
heavy.
that easy.
All right, Bob, stand by. We've got to take our final break. Indexonation Bob Coppes is our guest. His website is bobcoppes.com. Once again, if you're a skeptic or a believer, please send me an email. The question is, do you believe that NDEs are real? Once again, the question is very simple. Do you, the members of the Exonation, believe that near-death experiences are real? Send me an email, exone@classic1220.ca. I'll be back as we wrap up this hour and tonight here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in beautiful downtown St. Catharines, Ontario. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
It sounded so strange on the telephone. Well, it's hard when you discover what keeps you going, keeps you all alone. You get a shiver in the dark, it's raining in the park, but meantime, sound of the river, you stop and you hold everything.
We're talking about near-death experiences this hour, X-Zone Nation. Our guest is Bob Coppes. His website is bobcoppes.com. Bob, as a researcher, your background is that of a financier, right?
Correct?
So what gives you the credibility of a researcher into near-death experiences?
Well, the research that I did was 2 ways. One was to compare NDEs with 5 main religions.
Right.
And I studied each of them well. And I wrote a book about it because it was actually done. I did it for myself, but it got out of hand, was so big. So I thought maybe I'll just publish it.
Sure.
And that's what I did. The other study is that's in this book that's bringing together all these quotes of NDEs. That's something that anyone could do. Both of the things that anyone can do. The only thing that I bring with me from my academic background is the way to study things, the way to look at things, and that's the thing that I brought with me. But in principle, anyone could have done both things, even without an academic study. But it helps to sort of ask the right questions or go about in your procedures.
Sure. To be fair, and you will know this as a researcher, I'm sure, there are two sides to every coin. We've heard the side of the coin of what those who believe near-death experiences are, but I was wondering if you could tell us what the medical community is saying and how they would describe what a near-death experience is. The things that I hear, and there's a lot of people that are skeptic, and they try to reason down everything that people with an NDE say. Yeah.
And I decided to stop listening to them because they go to great lengths and they don't want to look at the facts. Like the facts for me, the most important facts for me are the theoretical observations, because they give some kind of evidence that NDEs are real, and at least the first phase where it's out-of-body experience.
How many out of how many of the cases that you cite in your books have you actually contacted the person who has made the statement to validate their claim?
About 3/4.
And how many would that be?
Sorry?
How many? What number would that be?
There were more than 100 NDEs that I have in my book. They have several quotes per person, so that would be several hundreds of quotes. But I got my these NDEs from my own environment. I have been in the organization in the Netherlands. I've been in the organization in the United States. You get to meet a lot of people there.
Sure.
And there are a lot of NDEs that you can find on websites like IANS, in their archives, or NDERF.
And these are people
sometimes you can try to contact them, and that's what I did. So I got into contact with a lot of those. So
okay, when you say you have hundreds of quotes, you've met all these people. How many people did you actually talk to that you spoke to about near-death experiences that you quote and have in your book?
And that's what I said. There's 100 people in my book.
And you've spoken to them all?
I think 75, something like that.
Okay. Why are NDEs important? Why do you and other people want to get that message out there?
Because it is a message of hope. If people would really see that theoretical observations are there and they are real, and that it gives some kind of evidence that NDEs are real, then there is also hope for an afterlife. There are so many people still afraid of death, of what happens after that, and NDEs show you that there is something beyond death. And there's also something else. If people really understand that what you do to others, you actually do to yourself.
I agree 100%.
Or
But
to
you don't
the
have
universe.
to. I agree with
then they
you.
will change their life towards nature and towards other people.
I agree with you that people should know that, but I don't think it takes a near-death experience for people to come to their senses. And, when you talk to some of these near-death experiencers, and like you said, people are afraid of death, they want to expect that there's more to life than the very short time that we spend in these meat suits of ours. It seems that the NDE is an escape from reality, that, we carry on, that there's this life afterwards, and we all go to either heaven or we go to nirvana, wherever. Is this a way of protecting their own psyche and rationalizing with the finality of life?
No, because it's an NDE doesn't come to you solicited. It is an accident. It's something that just happens to you. So you don't know how you can change afterwards. And what we see from the research, from all these people that we have spoken to, and not only me, but so many others, is that people change, and they lose their fear of death, and they change their attitude towards life. They become more social, less interested in money, and all these things that I mentioned before.
Right.
And even though they don't become saints, because they have their flaws and they can be doing bad stuff too, still.
But I guess the one question you haven't answered me, you kind of skirted around it because you said that you've dealt with skeptics and you want to stay away from that. And I wasn't talking about skeptics. I was talking about the medical community. You've got members of the medical community, a minority of the medical community, who believe that near-death experiences are real and should be investigated and taken seriously. And they give the experience, the example that the person sees out of their body, and they, look down, they talk about things that happen in the operating room and so on. But what do the other side of the medical community who do not believe what NDEs are, and what do they say the NDE is caused by?
I don't know what they think that causes it. Normally they say it's a lack of oxygen. Well, that's being discussed already in the research done in the Netherlands, which was published in the Lancet, a very important medical journal,
right,
that attracted a lot of attention. And also substances that are created in the brains of a dying person that may trigger these events. Those two things and a lot of other aspects have been refuted by this research. And yet the medical world still wants to hold on to the idea that the brain creates consciousness. It's never been proved that it's not the other way around. And here you have these experiences that say it's the other way around. I don't know why people don't want to look at that, even though there has been good research, as I mentioned before.
What is the ratio of people who have clinically died, just like those who report the near-death experiences, that come back and have never had an NDE?
It's big. There's a lot of people that have had a cardiac arrest. Like in the study in the Netherlands, there were 344 people in the study. Only 62 had a recollection of the moment they were out.
Right.
So the rest hasn't had an NDE. And the reason why that happens, why that is the case, we don't know. Maybe it's because they can't remember it, or maybe it's they were not dead enough. I don't know. That's something that still should be researched, but it's difficult. This area is so difficult to research, right, because you cannot repeat a death.
Well, yes, they can. They can. It's been done before, where a person,
not in a clinical situation.
Sure.
Oh, tell me.
All right. If somebody goes on a heart bypass machine, right? Their body is clinically dead.
In that kind of situations, yeah. But you cannot think of a protocol where you do research in trying to, sort of killing someone, but not all the way, and then getting them back again. That would be thought of immoral. Wouldn't you think so? Would you like to be in such a trial because perhaps something goes wrong and you really die?
There are people who go to drug trials all the time, and they take a risk by taking the injections of the product of the medication that they don't know what the effects are going to be. So I don't know. I really don't know on that one. But if more people were having the near-death experiences who were on the brink of death, were the majority compared to the minority, then I think there'd be cause for further investigation. But if you're telling me that most of the people who are, clinically dead come back and they have no recollection of a near-death experience compared to the minority that come back and claim to have a near-death experience, doesn't this give any validation to the scientific community saying, listen, it's not worthwhile chasing?
Well, there have been researches about how many times this happens.
Okay.
And apparently it's like 4 to 5% of the population in Western societies that are thought to have had such an experience. So in the United States, you calculate that for me. It's 4% of, 350 million people. So that's... let's
60
million people. In the Netherlands, it would be almost 1 million people.
All right, but let's look at it very simply. Okay, 4 out of 10 people who have who are clinically dead, 6 come back and say they've never had an experience. 4 come back and say they have.
Yeah, that's a lot, and it still is not being researched well.
But once again, you've got to take the number. You have to take all the figures and put it in the equation, just not these 2 little figures that you and I just did right now. Bob, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Continued success in X Zone Nation. If you'd like to contact our guest, Bob Coppes, his website is www.bobcoppes.com. And he also has a Facebook page. That is Robert.C.Coppes. Near-death experience. Fact or fiction? Are you a skeptic or are you a believer? My email address is xzone@classic1220.ca. Still, the jury is out, and I have a problem. I really have a problem with somebody who does research or believes so heavily in something as controversial as a near-death experience who has never had one himself. That, in my opinion, raises a question. If he would have told me that he had a near-death experience, this is what he saw, this is what he heard, this is what he came back with, that would have been 100% different. If he would have said that his near-death experience was his inspiration in writing his book, that too would have been different. Well, until tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, when once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. You're listening to us, as you do, Monday through Friday from 10 until midnight on Classic 1220. Good night, everyone.